There's a theory that we, the human being, we've have developed to become the worst breathers in the animal kingdom. It slows down your breath. It creates vibrations in your throat, which seems to stimulate the vagus nerve, which activates your calming parasympathetic nervous system. If you sigh too much, it's a sign that you might have been in this stressful situation too many times, like too often.
Welcome to Get Obsessed. I'm Natalie Kekwal. This season, I'm in conversation with women who built methods, founders who built tools, women who lived through something the system didn't know what to do with and built what they couldn't find. Today, I'm in conversation with Elsa, a functional breathing coach, founder of the Breath curriculum, and one of the teachers who has shaped how I work in my own practice. Let's get into it. Hey, welcome back to Get Obsessed. I'm sitting here with Elsa, who's a functional breathing coach. I found her online. I started to get obsessed with her stuff actually, and what she was putting out there as content, talking about women's breathing, neurodivergent breathing, just breathing in general, and all these different branches of it. So I was like, this is really interesting. I've never thought of breath as something for different types of people, more just an umbrella. And so I'm so excited to have her on the podcast. Hey, Elsa.
Hi, Nat. How are you?
I'm good.
Having me on. I'm so excited to chat about everything.
Thanks for coming on. So yeah, let's get right into it. I would love to know, how did you first discover breath work and what led you into this type of career?
Yeah, so I was not meant, or maybe I was meant to be a breathwork coach, but I didn't know I was meant to be a breathwork coach. But when I started my work career, I didn't have a path where I knew that I was going. Some people know they're going to be a doctor, or some people know that whatever they have in mind. And I was like always so jealous of those people who knew what they were interested in and what they wanted to work with. But yeah, I was trying different jobs, operations, different stuff. I lived in London, and then I moved to LA with my husband, and that's when I had time to explore really what I was into. Because in the beginning, when you move to the US, and if you're not from here, there's a long visa process, and there might be some months that you can't work. So that was exactly my situation. I couldn't work. So I was like, okay, I'm going to explore things that I'm interested in and see what I find. So I came across breathing, and I heard a podcast with James Nestor, who wrote the book Breath. Maybe some of you who are listening have heard about it, maybe even read it. So everything that he said, I was like, how can we not learn about this in school? And how do I know more? How do I not know more about my breath already? Like the most important thing we do every day, and I don't know anything. It's just automatic. So I thought it was perfect as it was. So that's when I was like, okay, I want to learn more about this for myself to just improve. I've always been interested in health and how the body works and psychology. I studied behavioral science. So I've always been interested in the body and how it works. So I was like, okay, I'm going to do this breathing certificate that I found. And when I finished that, someone overheard that I had done this breathing certificate, and she was like, oh my God, are you a breathing coach? I read the book by James Nestor, and I know I'm breathing wrong, but I don't know how to breathe right. And are you taking on clients? And in my head, I've told this story so many times, but in my head, I was like, not at all. I've just done this for myself. I'm not a breathwork coach, but the program that I did was a breath coach certificate. So in my head, I was like, just say yes. So I was like nodding and just not saying anything. I'm like, and she was like, oh my God, perfect. Are you taking on clients? Can we start tomorrow? And I was like, so that's how it started. I did this certificate. I had this person who were looking for a coach. I went back into the course like over the night and just, what should I say to my first clients? Because I skipped that chapter in the course because I was like, no, I'm not going to be a breathwork coach. I can skip this. So anyways, I coached her, and she just saw so many benefits from just changing a few small, simple things in her breath. So she told all her friends, because she knew that if they learned these two, they would benefit in some way. So all of a sudden, I was a breathwork coach, and I had clients. And at the same time as she became my first client, I got my work permit. So it's like meant to be. I guess I was meant to be a breathwork coach. And then everything after that, like the journey just was so like meant to be. How should I explain this? I didn't look for the opportunities. They came to me. So the next step after that I had my one-on-one clients was that during COVID, my husband also did a career shift. He went from advertising to open his own first restaurant together with his business partner. And the neighbors to the restaurant was a breathwork studio. So they popped by and, hey, we just want to say hi. We're a breathwork studio. And then they were like, oh, my husband was like, my wife is a breathwork coach. And like before that, we didn't know that breathwork coaches existed, or like I didn't know and he didn't know. So it was very like, okay, there's a breathwork studio next door, and they were looking for someone who knew the science behind what they were already teaching. And luckily, I had gone down that route in learning the science behind everyday breathing. So I met them like 2 days after, the day after, I can't remember. And yeah, I started to work for them, and that was a company called Open. So they both have a physical space here in Venice, and then they also have a breathing app. So I started working with them. Eventually I became full-time. So yeah, all of a sudden I was working full-time as a functional breathing coach in Venice. And yeah, then I started my own company. It was time for me to do my own thing. And now I work with different breathing apps, and I still do one-on-one coaching. I have online courses for people who just want to learn more about their breath, for like anxiety, performance, nervous system regulation, recovery, anything really, pregnant women, sleep issues. So yeah, that's just a little bit about how I came here, or how I ended up being a breathwork coach.
I love it. I love the synchronicity of it all. It's true. Yeah. It's like what's meant to be will happen. And that seems like it's exactly your story. And what you said about learning about the breath, it is something that just happens so automatically. So we take it for granted. I think most of us, we don't say, oh, I need to work on something that just happens automatically. And so I'd love to dive into that and say, is breath work beneficial for everyone? Is there a specific type of breathing that we should all be looking for?
Yeah, what the word breathwork means, because some people think about just upregulating breathing. They go to a class, they breathe very forcefully, heavy in and out of their mouth. That's one type of breathwork. And then another type of breathwork might just be when you're breathing consciously in and out of your nose, and maybe you're lengthening your exhales, for example. So that would be very calming. So the word breathwork simply means like when you take control over your breath to create a certain outcome. So it could be like, okay, I'm breathing in this pattern to fall asleep or reduce anxiety. And now I'm going to breathe in this other pattern to make me focus and alert and concentrated. Or I'll choose this third breathing pattern, which is to ramp up my energy, get more alert, or to reach a psychedelic-like state. So there are different practices for different outcomes. So you have something in mind, you do a breathwork practice, and you're trying to reach that state. So just to clear that out first. But breathing, of course, everyone is breathing automatically, but training your breath through various breathwork practices, I would 100% say it's beneficial for everyone, because most of us are not breathing properly. And there are various reasons to why we're not perfect breathers. But there's a theory that we, the human being, we have developed to become the worst breathers in the animal kingdom, according to researchers within this field. So there are reasons why we're not perfect breathers, which is also why most people will benefit from just making simple tweaks to their everyday breathing, or use breath training to improve their breath.
Okay. Is it part of our anatomy or physiology of why we become the worst breathers?
Yeah, there are different theories to why. One reason, for example, could be that we are sitting a lot. We sit like this, we hunch forward, which means that we can't utilize our lungs properly. So we force the breath into our chest, and we become chest breathers, which signals stress to the brain, because that's how we breathe when we're under threat. When we're in danger, we start to chest breathe. I guess a lot of people can relate to, oh yeah, I'm breathing quite a lot up into my chest. And just knowing that signals stress to the brain constantly. So we're constantly signal stress to our brain through our breathing. And then we have tight clothes that also pulls in our belly, and not that, so we can't utilize our diaphragm properly. We don't chew our food enough. After the Industrial Revolution, when we started to process our food, it becomes very soft, and we don't need to utilize the jaw muscles. And when our jaw gets weak, our mouth gets small, and it pushes back on the airway, so the airway gets narrow, which means we are struggling with each breath we take. And then you have, for example, like stress. When we are stressed, we start to breathe faster, and fast breathing is also a signal to the brain that we're in danger. So we have all these different reasons to why we become bad breathers, and these reasons are because we don't live the life our bodies are designed to live when they were like developed 1,000 years ago. So it's probably because we live so far away from how we're supposed to live, or not supposed to live, but how you get it.
We were designed to live. So what I'm hearing is that it's both intrinsic and extrinsic. It's something that we can't get away from. It's like we've sat on chairs, we're hunched over, we wear tight clothing, we're just breathing really fast and up in our chest. And so it's signaling that stress. And so our bodies don't know if there's a lion or if it's just me sitting at my computer. So our brains are getting all that stress activation. That's fascinating. Something that's coming to mind, and there's been a lot of debate on this, the mouth breathing in the evening and wearing the tape over your mouth. What are your opinions on that?
The mouth taping?
Yes.
And I think it's a good tool to practice healthy breathing, because it's a reminder to close the mouth, to breathe through the nose. It might not solve all the problems. If you might have to start exercising your tongue and your airway and your mouth, and that will solve the initial problem or the root cause. But if you can use mouth tape to help you get into the right place. So, for example, I spoke to a person who has asthma the other day, and she has started to use mouth taping just to remind herself to close her mouth, and it changed her life. So if something so simple can change someone's life from feeling like, oh, I didn't really properly lived before I started correcting my breathing, to feeling that everything's more simple, like she can breathe properly, just go through life smoother with more ease. If something so simple as a mouth tape can help, why not start there? And then of course you need to do the breathing practices too, but it's a tool that you can use to help you become a nose breather.
Use the tools that we.
But also, it's not for everyone. Like everyone don't have to use mouth tape, because they might already breathe through their nose, and then of course they don't need it. And then there are different, like sleep apnea, for example. If you think you have sleep apnea, you should talk to your doctor, see what they recommend. And so just be careful before you start. There are a few steps that you can do before you start.
Okay. And what about those magnets that people are wearing on their nose now to widen their nasal passages?
Yes, nasal strips. So you can use these things like nasal strips that actually pulls up your nostrils, so that they are more open, so that you can breathe more properly. And they work for some people, they don't work for others. But I would definitely recommend it if you feel like you have blocked nose, or if you feel like you can't get enough air through the nose. I would wear those when I sleep with the mouth tape, so both of them. And then when you exercise, for example, or during the day, if you feel comfortable wearing it.
Okay, I love it. I haven't tried them. I feel like my breath is good, but now that I'm talking to you, I'm like, I feel like I could improve it.
I've heard so many stories about how effective they've been to people, and how they improve their sleep, and how they feel more alert, and how they can work longer hours. The nose is more the opposite. If you don't use it, it tends to clog up. It tends to become more narrow. So they've seen just from breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth, just that skipping the nose when you breathe out, that also shows that the nose is clogging up. And after, I think they did a 4-minute breathing with nose in, mouth out, and then they stopped. And after 1 minute, they tested how open the nose was, and it was 200% more clogged up. And it took 10 minutes for the nose to fully open up again. So the more you use your nose, the more it opens up, because the more is happening in there and it starts to open up. But it's like when we get older, most people, or a lot of people, tend to breathe more through the mouth because of all these reasons. We become mouth breathers due to the fact that we're living so far away from where our bodies are designed to live. Yeah, it's more of a lucid organ.
Okay. And you said something before that I really found interesting, because I never put the connection together. Chewing our food, using jaw, because I know in the line of work that we do, that I do, it's a top-down approach to help your stomach acid build, right? So if you don't chew food, you have low stomach acid, and it could cause acid reflux, indigestion. But I never associated it with, if you don't chew, you lose that function of your breath. That's so fascinating.
Yeah, and it's even linked to malocclusion, like when your teeth are not straight, because our mouth then grows smaller, our teeth get crooked because they don't have enough space. So that's also because of the weaker jaw, smaller mouth. We don't have the tongue in the roof of our mouth, so that it helps to keep the teeth aligned, so the tongue falls back in the floor of the mouth instead of the top. So it's just so many things that are linked to how we breathe and how much we chew. And yeah, it's fascinating.
It is. It's so fascinating. So the work that I do, I spoke a little bit about it briefly with you, is really about the menstrual cycle. And so I was wondering, are there certain types of breath work that you can do to support the different phases of a woman's cycle?
Some people do everything according to their cycle, how they train, how they eat. That's probably great. I haven't dove into that, but in terms of breathing and what I know about the cycle is that first we have the follicular cycle, which is where we have our period, and then before, or including our ovulation, I think. And then after that, we have the luteal phase. And when we look at our hormones throughout that cycle, we have progesterone, which is low in the first phase, and then it goes up after the ovulation, and then it peaks about 1 week before your period. And of what they've found in studies is that progesterone is linked to breathing. So progesterone is a breathing stimulant. So the higher it is, the faster we breathe. And I have tracked that with my cycle too. Like when I'm in my follicular phase, I breathe slower. And then when progesterone starts to rise, I tend to breathe faster. And at one week before the period, when progesterone is highest, we breathe fast. And that's also when most women feel their PMS, like those symptoms. So it's very linked to the breathing, the cycle. So yes. And also we are more stress tolerant in the first phase of our cycle, which means that you can do stronger breath holds. You can push yourself a little more. You might do the upregulating breathing practices, the ones where you're deliberately hyperventilating for various reasons. And then you might want to do more calming breathing practices after your ovulation, before your period, to just take it easy with your body. So that's how I would structure it. To be honest, I don't plan my breathing according to my cycle, but if you would, that's how you could think about it.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to understand that progesterone upregulates our breath, because it's true, where our nervous system is a lot less resilient during that time. And so it's nice to know that maybe that's the time to take those bigger breaths, those deeper breaths, so that we just know that it's not us, it's just our physiology that's pushing that breath out faster.
To help with any symptoms like PMS symptoms, to help your body to downregulate when we're sensitive to stress. So downregulating breathing, I would do.
And so when it comes to perimenopause and postmenopause, does it follow the same trend? So as progesterone starts to drop in the body, do we have that whole breath out, or does it become our bodies are just less resilient to the hormones and starts to up. So that begins to upregulate the breath.
And you said progesterone drops. Does it do that when we start to enter?
Yeah, so in perimenopause, what happens is that because estrogen is spiking and lowering, spiking and lowering, the corpus luteum, what creates the progesterone isn't as strong. And so it'll push out the egg, but it might not create enough progesterone for the full 2 weeks. That's why in perimenopause, one of the first symptoms is the reduction of your menstrual cycle days. If your cycle was always 28 days, it starts to become 26 or 24, and that's the luteal phase starting to teeter off. And so as we keep moving through perimenopause, the first hormone to go is the progesterone. So it would be interesting to research what happens if the progesterone is low. Does that still upregulate our system?
I don't know. That's interesting. I'm going to look into that. Very fascinating. Okay. Because I think down-regulating breathing is good for pre-menopause and menopause to balance the nervous system, because that's really what it comes down to when you look down into the core to everything that's happening in our body. It's coming down to our nervous system. Is it off balance or is it balanced? And with breathing, you can balance your nervous system. So I think it's a great tool to use there too. But I will look into the lowering of progesterone and what happens to our breath then.
I'd love to hear if you find anything. Just on that note, there was, when I was doing a workshop for menstrual cycling and I was teaching a certain type of breath, one of the clients in the workshop said to me, I was using box breathing, and she said to me, box breathing gives me full anxiety. I cannot do it. Are there certain breathing techniques that actually trigger anxiety in some people? And why does that happen?
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring up that exact practice. And I think that's because that's one of the most known breathing practices, because it spread from the Navy SEALs were using it, so a lot of people are talking about it. And yes, I've heard that too. I have felt that too, and that's because each breathing practice, you need to make it yours. You need to personalize it. Someone with very big lungs and a huge big lung capacity and that is training their breath a lot, they might be able to do a very slow box. And box breath, for those who don't know, it's in through the nose for a count of 4 usually, hold at the top to a count of 4, out through the nose to a count of 4, and then hold at the bottom. So you breathe in, you hold, you breathe out, and then you hold. And depending on who you are, the boxes are different sizes depending on how your lungs are and how you're breathing. So if you're doing a box that is too slow or too big, it will create anxiety because you're breathing too little and you're holding too long. So you need to find your perfect ratio. So that's why, because people don't know everything about breath work, they just hear from a podcast like, oh, box breath, do box breath, and then they try a guided box breath and they're like, this is not for me, like breathing is not for me. That's just because they didn't find or tried the one that worked for them. So what I do with my clients, I take them through different breathing practices, and then I have them like, okay, which one do you like the most? Because you can do different breathing patterns, but they will all have the same outcome, but you find the one that works for you. So yeah, box breath is not my favorite either, and it can be stressful because you're breathing too slow and holding for too long.
Okay, that's so interesting. When you're teaching a class, you give different breathwork techniques, but let's say, for example, I go take a yoga class that the teacher is teaching 45 students and they walk in and they just start the breathwork routine. Are there tips that you tell your students, like after coming to a workshop with you, that you say, like, maybe like, even if the teacher is saying something, if it doesn't feel good in your body, then just let it go or practice one of the breathworks that I've given you?
You mean during the practice or after the practice?
So during, so for example, so again, some of my clients that have taken my workshop say, but what do I do in class if the teacher is calling out something? Of course, I'm going to follow them. And I often hear the teacher knows. And I'm like, but the teacher doesn't know you specifically. So you need to do what feels good for you. However, maybe they don't have any other breathwork techniques, or they feel like, oh, I'm going to try it because I'm told that this is supposed to help me. So what would you say to someone in that situation?
Yeah, so after a session, if they want to try it at home, I would say to find your size of the box. And in the session, as a teacher, I would say, this is the pattern that we're doing. If it feels too uncomfortable for you, if you feel like it's too slow, just take a couple of recovery breaths and then join or breathe in your own way. But when I guide breath work or when I guide box breath in a class with different people, I try to do it a faster box, because then most people can do it and it won't be too slow. So I try to avoid the longer boxes. So that's for the box breath. But that's what makes it hard to create a breathwork session with 40 people where they all breathe differently. So that's why you need to pick the practices that fits into one of those classes. And then when you're one-on-one, you can more try the different practices that works for that person.
Because I would think that if you're in class and everyone's doing it and it's causing a lot of anxiety, that's interacting with your nervous system. And maybe you start to feel shame, or you're like, oh, I'm not good enough. And all these kind of thoughts start to trigger an anxiety attack too. Is that something that you see or hear from some of your clients?
Yeah, and that's something I feel too when I go to a class and they hold your breath and then they forget that we're holding our breath. And you're like, this is not, and I'm so aware of everything. So I'm like, this is not comfortable for me and for the people around me. And I'm like, okay. Anyways, I hope people are back to breathing. I hope they're not holding their breath anymore. So as a teacher, you have to be very aware of like how long you make people hold. If it's just after a few simple breaths, it will be uncomfortable for people. So for sure, that's also the sad thing when people go to class and they are guided through the box breath, for example, and they're like, okay, breathing is not for me, and then skip that. So yeah, there are different breathing practices for different people. Yeah.
Okay. And I have a question. It's a little bit selfish because I have a client and she has ADHD, and she tells me certain times certain breath work feels really good, and at certain times breath work doesn't feel good. And so for me, I attribute it to the progesterone. I was like, oh, maybe during the progesterone state, it's upregulating you. But I would love to hear if ADHD has a certain breath work, or what particular approaches tend to work better with people with that neurodivergence.
Yeah. So same there. No matter who you are, a different practice will work better for me and a different practice would work better for you, because you like the feeling you have when you do it. And same with people with ADHD. They might not like to start with a very slow breath because that makes them stressed from slowing down in that way. So instead of doing take a slow breath in through your nose, take a slow breath out through your nose, maybe you'll do something like a practice where you have to focus on something else rather than your breath. So like humming, for example, you breathe in through the nose and then you make a humming sound by breathing out through the nose. And then you could teach them focus on the sound, so they are not thinking about that they're actually breathing, they're just thinking about a sound that they make. And when it comes to humming, it lengthens your exhales because you can't hum fast. So automatically it lengthens the exhales. And when you breathe out for longer than you breathe in, your heart rate tends to drop. So that's one example. You could do the box breath. If they found their perfect box, then you can use the box breath so that they can be like, okay, I'm going to draw a box with each breath. I'm going to do it even with my hand. I'm going to raise my finger on the inhale and then I'm going to draw the box. The focus is on drawing a box rather than breathing. Or you can do the physiological sigh. So the physiological sigh is 2 breaths in and 1 long breath out through the nose or mouth, whatever you prefer. But why I'm bringing up the physiological sigh is because I would explain what happens in the body. So when they breathe, instead of thinking about breathing, they think about what's going on in the body when they breathe. So those are just a few. You could do like the finger under the nose practice, which is you just place your index finger horizontally under your nose and then you breathe in and out normally. And then instead of focusing on breathing, you focus on the wind against your finger coming from your breath, and then you try to reduce that wind. And when you reduce the wind, it's because you're breathing slowly. So you're breathing slower, but you're actually thinking about just reducing the speed of the breath. So any breathwork practice where you draw your attention away from the breath could be good for someone with ADHD, so they don't get stressed of breathing slowly, if that makes sense. What do you think of that work?
Yeah, it makes so much sense, like expanding this sensory awareness so they're not just drawn into that like primary sensation. A lot of sense.
Visualization, pretend you have a balloon inside your belly, so their mind goes to the balloon instead of breathing. So yeah, different techniques. You can play around with them and make them yours and add other types of practices onto the breathing.
You said the sigh breath. That's the one where you like sip in extra air. Yeah. Can you explain the physiology of that? What's happening in our bodies and why is it so calming?
A few different reasons and theories, but they have been, the sigh or the physiological sigh, it has been studied for a long time. So there's a lot of research behind it. But what happens is when you take a big or fast breath or 2 breaths in a row, you bring in a lot of air fast, which helps to open up your tiny air sacs called alveoli. So alveoli can collapse like these. So visualize your lungs, and inside your lungs, they're full of grapes, like bunch of grapes. And the grape is your air sacs. So it's full of small bubbles inside your lungs. And each of these bubbles can collapse so that no air can come in and get diffused into our bloodstream. And to pop them open, we can do sighs. We can take a fast breath in, or we can take 2 breaths in a row. So that helps to open these air sacs so that we can utilize them to take in oxygen. So that's one thing that happens when we sigh, or when we do the physiological sigh. And the second thing that happens is that we take a long exhale. And again, coming back to the long exhales, when we lengthen the exhale, our heart rate tends to go down. And we get rid of some carbon dioxide, which feels good. So those are just a few of the things. And we do this automatically on a daily basis. I think we do this every 5th minute. So every 5 minutes we sigh, or we take this bigger breath without really knowing it. Now I've been so aware, so I feel when I'm all of a sudden breathing very fast, and I was like, wait, what happened there? Oh, it was a sigh, and it's for opening my alveoli so I can utilize my lungs properly.
That is so interesting, because some days there's certain days that the entire morning I'm just like, and really sigh, and I'm like, why am I sighing so much? What is going on? And so it's interesting to hear the understanding of that, the explanation of why that might be happening.
And I notice as well, and I think it is around that 25th day of my cycle, or even earlier, when progesterone is highest, I tend to sigh a lot, because it's the increase in carbon dioxide, which we are sensitive to, which progesterone is linked to. So I tend to sigh more because I want to get rid of this carbon dioxide that builds up because I'm uncomfortable with it. And it's also sighing it's called a sigh of relief, which means you've been stressed, you've been tense, and then you sigh to reset, to come back. So it's also a sign. So if you sigh too much, it's a sign that you might have been in this stressful situation too many times, like too often. It's a sign that you need to reset from something. So it's not just a positive sign to sigh all the time. It's, oh, why do I sigh? Because I've been stressed in this moment before. So I'm trying to reset. So it's good to be aware of how much you're sighing and if there's a reason why you're sighing.
That's so interesting. It really, it's like taking care, seeing the breath in such a different way, in the relationship to the breath, to help you understand where you are in your life, how you're interacting with what's going on around you, and how stressed you might feel. It's really cool.
Yeah, you can use your breath as a measurement to tell you how you feel. If you feel like your breath is fast, you're probably feeling stressed or worried or anxious or something like that. Or if you feel like, oh, I'm breathing very slowly into my belly. Oh, I'm feeling safe, because that's how we breathe when we're safe. Or I'm sighing a lot today, which could be like, okay, it's a good sign to stop. What's happening? Why am I worried? Why am I stressed? And then you figure that out, or you don't, but you can always use a breathing pattern to calm down, to get away from all those sighs, for example.
Love it. And then what about yawning?
When I looked up the science, like why are we sighing? Why are we yawning? It feels like we don't know exactly why. My personal thought has to be something to do with the widening of the mouth. We can take a big breath without doing this. We don't have to expand our mouth the fullest to take a full breath. I feel like there must be a reason to why we want to expand, open the mouth. I think, could it be that we need to stretch something there? Or but there's a lot of different theories that we need to cool down the brain because it got hot, so we take this big breath to cool down somehow. Or it's just a sign that we are breathing less because we start to get tired, so we forget to breathe, so we need to take this big breath. And those are just a few of the theories. It was so long since I read about them, but a yawn is a sign that you are relaxed or tired. It's a good sign if you're doing a breath practice and you yawn. It's okay, it worked. You have calmed down your nervous system now.
Okay. And then maybe this is a crazy question to add on to it, but like, why is it contagious? Why, when someone yawns, like when you just opened your mouth and you weren't even yawning, I was almost opening up my mouth. Like, why would that happen?
I don't know. I don't know. If you sit like this, you will see me sit. If you sit with if I sit with my hands crossed, I will see you sit with your hands crossed soon. I guess it's one of those things we want to mimic to show compassion or show that we care about you, or that it's. But and the yawning is such a specific thing. So I guess I don't know.
It's so interesting because while you were saying that, I was like, oh yeah, that does make sense that we mirror each other to showcase safety, to help our nervous systems feel like we're in relationship with someone that understands us. And so when we do this weird gesticulation with our mouth, it's like we almost want to be like, it's okay, me too. I'm going to do this thing too with you. Okay, I'm going to jump back into more of women-focused breathing. So let's say someone is on their fertility journey. Is there a specific breath work that you would recommend for a woman just to feel a little bit more supported?
Any breath work practice that makes you feel calm. So it could be like calming practices could be in and out of the nose, longer exhales because the exhale slows the heart rate. It could be humming practices. It could be short breath holds that feel comfortable. And then the opposite to that, what would make you more energized is in and out of the mouth, longer inhales, shorter exhales, longer breath holds, fast breathing. So I would do the first category: nose, slow breathing, belly breathing, short breath holds, anything that makes you calm.
Okay. And then when you do get pregnant and your belly is growing and you have less space for your diaphragm, what do you support breath work in that moment of a woman's?
To be safe, we recommend not doing any breath holds and any fast breathings, just to be completely safe and make sure your baby gets oxygen. So slow breathing, nose breathing, belly breathing, humming, in for 4, out for 8. It doesn't have to be in seconds. It can be faster or slower. That's what I recommend when I work with women who are pregnant. And then also, if you're pregnant, it's helpful to learn how your breathing works. So you know how to breathe to make your body feel safe, how to breathe to improve oxygenation, for example.
Okay. And so how would one go about learning how they're breathing?
I go to Women 101, or I have online programs where I go through all of that, like the fundamentals of breathing, the essentials. How are we supposed to breathe? How should we breathe functionally? How are most people breathing dysfunctionally? And there are courses in Swedish, we call them prophylax course. Do you recognize that?
Prophylax?
No, it's like a program where you learn breathing techniques, relaxation techniques, and techniques to make you feel safe. You could do those. I'm trying to give you a safe source, because I don't want to say go on YouTube and see what you find, because, or ask ChatGPT. They're not always right. Go through my Instagram channel or do the 30 days for free breathing library and just scroll through, see what you find, pick out the practice you find, and then you can unsubscribe and just have them so you learn from someone and somewhere with where you also get some of the science behind it, I think is important, because if you know what's happening in your body, even though you might not feel calm after 1 or 2 breaths, you know that, okay, if I do these type of breathing practices, I know what's happening in my body. I know my blood vessels are opening up. I know my blood circulation starts to become better. I know my heart rate starts to calm down. So it's just all these things that happens in the body when you do a specific breathing practice, and that is good to know to get motivated to do it.
Yeah,
there is a lot of recent research on breathing, nose breathing versus mouth breathing on pregnant women, and how big of an impact it has on the delivery and the baby's health and everything. So it is very important, the breathing part, when you are pregnant. So it's good to learn about it, and then you learn it once and then you know it for the rest of your life, and all of a sudden you have this tool that is always available, literally under your nose, that you can use to control your nervous system, instead of letting your nervous system control your life, which I think a lot of people feel like that's how they go through life. Okay, I feel anxious, and that makes me not want to do this, that makes me not want to run, or that gives me panic attacks or whatever. And it's, instead of having, okay, I know how to use my breath, I know how to use it to change things in my body to, for example, stop a panic attack or reduce anxiety or open up my airways if I have asthma, for example. So yeah, I recommend everyone to just dig into it wherever you find the information.
Yes, I love this approach. I think it's so brilliant. I think education is so important to have in conjunction with learning the techniques, because then you feel exactly like you said, supported. So if you're not feeling good at the beginning, you know why you're doing it. And so eventually you'll feel hopefully supported for you. My question was mostly, it was like a little bit more of when you put your hands on your diaphragm and you feel yourself expand, one side expands a little bit more than the other. Is this normal? Can you sensory experience? Can you place your hands on your body and tell if your breath is really moving through you in an optimal way?
Yeah, you can place your hands on your lower ribs to see if you feel the movement there, instead of, for example, feeling the movement in your chest. And a good way to practice is sitting in front of a mirror. So you place your hands on your lower ribs, so you feel your lower ribs, and then you watch as you breathe if you feel the movement there in your hands. And then you also see if you feel it because you're moving your shoulders up and down, or are they still? And you want them to be still. So you want to force or try to force your breath lower down, which of course is super hard if you're pregnant, but at least get into that mindset of breathing down.
Yeah, because we want the breath to move towards the pelvic floor. We want to help it open up with every breath.
Exactly. And that becomes very relevant in labor. You want to breathe down, because you want to calm down and you want to focus all the energy down instead of up into your chest and shoulders. Because if you start to breathe into your chest and shoulders, again, you're signaling stress, and then your whole body tense up and it will be harder to deliver. So it's all connected, and it's good to practice before it's time. So you know, so you don't go into labor and what did you say, how was I supposed to breathe and how I supposed to feel. We need to train and practice so that we know what to do when it's time.
So quickly, what do you think about Lamaze breathing? Like this breath that we see on every TV show, this is how you breathe when you're pregnant. This is like the coaching breath that you see on all like the I don't know, like the 90s sitcoms. I don't know if that, do you know this breath?
The one where you sound like a snake and you breathe out through your mouth, is that the one?
It's like okay, I'm going to put it in the microphone. So you go. Have you heard of this breath?
Yeah, I'm familiar. I've seen it, but I don't know why they would do that, because I have a video of my mom when she's pregnant with me, and she's just doing this very fast, forced breathing through her mouth. And I think it doesn't signal to your brain, oh, this is perfect breathing, you're calm and safe, but it takes your focus away from the pain. So whatever they teach is they probably have a reason behind it. So that's what how I'm trying to look at breathing. Like in the beginning, when I taught people like nose breathing, you should nose breathe, and people were like, came back and, oh, someone said I would breathe in through my mouth and out through the mouth, and she didn't know what she was talking about. I was like, wait, what class is this? Like maybe there's a reason to why she's guiding you mouth and mouth. So just be open, and however someone is guiding you, there's probably a reason behind it. And be curious, ask, hey, why did we do this type of breathing in this situation? Either they have a good reason or they don't know. And then if they don't know, then you might want to go and look it up.
You said before that when people are stuck, like in freeze state or just filled with anxiety and just don't know how to live any other way, is there a first in approach with someone that feels they're like, I don't have time to breathe, or I can't do this right now? What would you say to them?
We breathe through everything we do. Like we always breathe. So we can add breathwork practices on top of that. For example, you might walk from your door to your car or to the metro or however you get to work. Use that space to do a breathing practice. Because when you start to improve your breath, it has a direct link to your nervous system, which is the reason to why you feel anxious, because of your nervous system. You think you're under threat or whatever the situation. You might have a very specific reason, like a situation that makes you anxious, which is fine too, but it's always connected to the nervous system. And with your breath, you can control your nervous system. So that's how breathing is so linked to anxiety. It might not be the reason to it, but it's a tool that you can use to improve it. You start to use breathwork training when you do something else. When you go for your run, if you exercise, use your breath training there. Like, you don't lose any time and you will only feel better. And I'm saying this because I've spoken to so many people who have anxiety, who have started to improve their breath, and they just say they're just disappointed why they've never heard about this before. And it's nothing woo-woo. It's nothing, like, it's just basic physiology. It's your breath, the thing you do every day. And of course, if we're not breathing properly, it impacts how we feel.
Love that approach. And then, do you have a favorite breath technique, or does that change throughout your month?
Yeah, it changed, but I have a few go-to that I do. I do the humming breath when I'm in the car because the sound from it. And I do that because the humming breath has so many benefits. It slows down your breath. It creates vibrations in your throat, which seems to stimulate the vagus nerve, which activates your calming parasympathetic nervous system. So you can trick your brain into saying, I feel safe, from just doing humming breaths. And then you also release more nitric oxide, which is a gas that is produced in your nasal sinuses. So you release 15 times more nitric oxide when you hum versus when you breathe normally. And nitric oxide is antiviral, antibacterial. It helps to sterilize your airway. So you do a little cleaning of your nasal sinuses when you hum. And nitric oxide has so many other benefits. It helps to oxygenate your muscles, your brain, so you can think clearly. And then I do ujjayi breath, ocean breath. That if you do yoga, you've heard about ujjayi breath, I think. And I do that when I do something else. So when I'm on my laptop, when I write, when I do something where I don't want to focus on my breath, I just want to do it as a background practice. That's when I do ujjayi breath, to control my breath without having to think about it. And those are my go-to now. I probably have one that I don't. Yeah, many small breath holds. If I go on a walk, I add in some small breath holds. After lunch, I walk and breathe in for 4 steps, and I breathe out for 8 steps to, again, boost digestion. So yeah, I have a few different ones that I do throughout the day.
I love that you just said it boosts digestion. I think that's a really fun benefit of the slowing down of the breath, because the rest can digest. You want to be more in your parasympathetic tone. And then the more and more you're speaking about it, you can just do breath work to improve your HRV. I feel like you don't have to run. You can sit for 20 minutes and use some of these breathing techniques. And is this correct, that it would improve your HRV? Okay.
Yeah, your HRV and breathing is also directly linked. And I had a client who was injured, so he couldn't train. And then he was doing these breathwork practices, and he was like, I felt so ready and my HRV was up. I felt so ready when he was healed and he was coming back to training. He felt like he had been training for 2 weeks. Yeah, breathwork is a perfect practice to do if you're injured and you want to keep up with your exercise in another way.
Okay, I love that.
Mm.
And then if people wanted to work with you, where would they find you?
My company is called Breath Curriculum, so they can find me under breathcurriculum.com or on my Instagram at breathcurriculum, and just send me a DM and I would love to connect.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, Elsa, for taking the time to speak with me today. It was absolutely fascinating.
Oh, thank you. I'm so happy to be here and talk about this with you.
Thank you.
That was Elsa. You can find her work in the show notes. Go and look. There's something really special there for you as well. If something in this episode stayed with you, I'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment, send me a message, tell me what landed. I'm Natalie Cacan. This is Get Obsessed. We'll be back in 2 weeks.